You're watching Euronews now. I'm Rome Zadi, and these are the top stories this hour. Ukraine fights back as Russian missiles strike Kyiv. Ukrainian forces launch a counter-offensive in occupied Kherson in the south, putting Russia on defence. France's president meets with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman amid European energy woes. And will it be a replay of the 1966 World Cup? Germany books their place in the Women's Euros final on Sunday, where they'll face off with England.
Ukraine's counter-offensive in Kherson is gathering momentum, according to the UK Ministry of Defence. The southern city was the first in the war to fall to Russian forces and has been occupied since then. Now, a key bridge is out of action after Ukrainian forces struck it with long-range rockets. This as massive Russian missiles launched strikes on the capital Kyiv and Chernihiv regions, areas that haven't been targeted in weeks. Peter Dickinson, editor at the Atlantic Council's Ukraine Alert, says Vladimir Putin now faces some difficult choices in his invasion.
Kherson is the largest, in fact, only administrative centre, major city that the Russians have been able to capture in the first 5 months of the war. So it's hugely strategically and symbolically important. The city is located on the west bank of the Dnipro River, which dissects Ukraine more or less from north to south and centre. So it's the only major point of the country under Russian occupation on the right bank, the west bank of the river. So Ukraine is trying to eradicate this bridgehead, essentially. They're edging forward slowly. In the last couple of days, they've brought the key transport links, the bridges across the Dnipro River, which Russian occupation forces depend upon, under fire control. They've hit the bridges hard. They've, by most reports, disabled them. The Russians are not able to use them now to bring troops and weapons into Kherson and the Kherson region to reinforce their position there. And now the Ukrainians are feeling confident enough to actually say to the Russians, retreat now or you will be annihilated. So Putin faces some very difficult choices. He can potentially pull back across the river still and save his troops, but that will be humiliating and be a very major psychological setback for the invasion, or he can risk those troops being captured or possibly destroyed.
The Ukraine war may be far away, but it's already hitting home in Germany. In Cologne, officials and citizens are taking steps to reduce energy consumption. At this block of apartments, the caretaker turns down the boiler a few degrees. The message is getting through to local people, but some here are not happy with their government.
Well, I think that our government has made itself too dependent on various countries, and this is now the big problem we're facing. We're dependent on them, and now we have to pay for what our government has done.
Elsewhere in the city, managers of an outdoor swimming pool have stopped heating the water.
I like it cold. I'm happy with it, but I know a lot of people who won't be happy with this.
Gas deliveries to Germany from Russia have plummeted in recent days. Authorities fear they could fall even further in the months ahead.
The current problem is the big uncertainty. What will be next? We are highly dependent on energy supply and political decisions made in Moscow, and that's a situation we've never seen before.
Between reduced gas supplies and soaring energy costs, Germany and other European countries are facing the prospect of a winter of discontent.
With Russia reducing energy supplies to Europe, finding alternative routes has been made all the more difficult. Norway's state oil and gas company Equinor is closing a gas power plant, a decision regarded as completely untimely by local authorities and business owners. Those voicing concerns have pointed to the Nordic Kingdom's own power crisis, and that Norway is a large exporter, not importer, of energy. The decision is bound to affect both domestic and industrial aspects of Norwegian life. Here in Roras in central Norway, farmers are already feeling the pinch on their pocket when the energy bills arrive.
If companies and colleagues of ours go under in the neighbourhood, we do not gain anything from that. The state cannot sit idly by and watch what is happening now. They must step in and act.
Norway's oil and gas rigs in the North Atlantic have been working at full throttle since the war in Ukraine started to replace Russian gas for the EU. It is also much more reliant in hydropower for domestic use, but recent hot temperatures mean less water and hydropower, meaning higher prices. Security is high outside Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's French mansion ahead of his state visit with French President Emmanuel Macron. The two leaders will dine this evening at the Elysee Palace, with trade and energy deals on the menu. Bin Salman is arriving from Greece, where he made his first state visit to Europe since 2018. For France, Macron has already been trying to secure energy supplied from the Gulf nations. Last week, he hosted leader of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, at the Elysee Palace. With Russia now halving its gas supplies to Europe, finding alternative sources is crucial. Supporters of the influential Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr remained outside Iraq's parliament after nightfall, following an early storming of the building. Several of them carried portraits of the Shia leader. Their anger had been triggered by the selection of Mohammed al-Sudani for Prime Minister, backed by Iranian parties.
For 20 years we've only seen the same faces in power. 2 years ago we held protests with 35,000 wounded and 800 martyrs. Now the faces are here again. Al-Sudani is rejected and anyone from his side is also rejected.
Wednesday's protests are the latest challenge for oil-rich Iraq, which remains mired in a political and socio-economic crisis, despite a record income from soaring global energy prices. Al-Sadr's bloc emerged from elections in October as the biggest parliamentary faction, but was still far short of a majority. And 9 months on, deadlock persists over the establishment of a new government. Al-Sudani was selected by former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, but can't take a seat until a president has been chosen. Al-Sadr left government formation talks after failing to garner enough support for the presidential post, but evidently retains a strong support base.
The Pope has touched down in Quebec. It's the next leg of his historic trip, offering an in-person apology for the role of the Catholic Church in the abusive treatment of thousands of Indigenous children in its residential schools. Pope Francis flew east across the country from Edmonton, where he was greeted by Governor-General Mary Simon and Prime Minister Trudeau. Leaders have pointedly told the pontiff of the horrors Indigenous students endured.
On Monday morning, I was sitting with survivors, and I felt their reaction to your apology. Each will take from it what they need, but there's no doubt that you had an enormous impact.
Our desire to renew the relationship between the Church and the Indigenous peoples of Canada, a relationship marked both by a love that's born from the outstanding fruit and, tragically, deep warmth. We are committed to understanding and healing.
As crowds gather to see the Pope, they remember the Indigenous children separated from their families and brought to residential schools from 1870 to 1996. They were starved or beaten for speaking their native languages and sexually assaulted. US President Joe Biden has celebrated his recovery from COVID-19 with an appeal to Americans to get vaccinated. He compared his mild symptoms and work-from-home performance to the serious case experienced by his predecessor Donald Trump. Biden, who is 79, ended his isolation period after testing negative on Tuesday evening and again on Wednesday morning. Gunfire has rung out on the streets of Port-au-Prince as Haiti's gang wars intensify. More than 470 people have been killed, injured, or gone missing this month. The violence has forced hundreds of children and adults to take refuge at a prestigious high school, and the state university has suspended classes after finding bullets inside its classrooms.
You're watching Euronews Now. Do stay with us. Lots more to come on the programme.